Welcome to Menopause and Miracles, the podcast for women who know there's more to midlife than simply getting through it. Together, we unpack the real stories, expert advice, and everyday moments that help us navigate menopause, rediscover ourselves, and step into this season feeling stronger, healthier, and a whole lot more alive. So, I'm Suzanne, your host, and your midlife wingwoman. And today we're talking about the one thing that comes with us everywhere in midlife, our bodies. Because let's be honest, sometimes your body in midlife seems to have a mind of its own. There's a new ache, a mysterious pain. Your hormones are doing their own little dance, and your energy isn't what it used to be. And things you never thought twice about, including your pelvic and sexual health, suddenly deserve a seat at the table. And here's the good news: you don't necessarily have to accept all of it as, quote, just getting older. Today we're talking about pain, hormones, gut health, weight, pelvic health, sexual health, and what it really means to get your vitality back. Oh my. And so if you ever thought, why does my body feel so different? Is this normal, or is this something I should actually do something about? Then you're in the right place. Because midlife isn't about learning to live with the feeling less like yourself. It's really about understanding your body, listening to what it's telling you, and finding your way back to feeling good in it again. This is episode 64, The Midlife Body, What Nobody Tells You. And joining me today is Stacey Roberts, a physical therapist and holistic registered nurse. Stacey blends expertise in functional medicine, physical therapy, nursing, and complementary medicine to craft strategies that are as unique as you are. And with Stacey, you're not just another appointment on the calendar, you're a partner in a dance towards optimal health. She utilizes high-tech treatments like soft-wave therapy, evidence-based testing, and treatment programs combining the most up-to-date strategies and timeless holistic practices. Since 1990, she's been the compass guiding patients through this landscape of pain reduction, improved vitality, weight loss, hormone optimization, and addressing gut health issues. All of the above. Hi, Stacey. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And just saying that midlife is a mouthful when you're talking about our health. I mean, there is
Absolutely.
really a lot in there.
100%. You got it.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this conversation because whether someone's newly entering perimenopause, menopause, in it or post, there are still things I think we're learning that are being more will be revealed in our bodies, in ourselves, and addressing things that we never had to address before. So, but let's start. Where are you on the midlife meter?
So I am well past menopause. It's been almost a decade now. I'm thankful that I know what I know, but it seems as though everywhere I am on my journey, my patients teach me more and more about not only their journey, but mine as well. Depending on, I've been doing this for almost 40 years. So I learn a
Yeah.
ton from my patients going through this as well as what my own experience has been.
Yeah, and isn't that amazing? You could be doing something for so long and I mean, that's my personality, is to be in something where I am continually learning. And what was your menopause experience like for you?
So perimenopause was actually, and don't throw any hate at me for this, for your listeners, but it was actually really good. But I'm going to tell you why. I think it was because all the work that I did leading up to that, like after having my son, after having some thyroid issues, after having joint pain and gut health issues and things like that, I really unknowingly was preparing myself for perimenopause. My mom had a terrible perimenopause and menopause. I would talk to her, we'd get into a heated discussion, and she'd break into a hot flash and be soaking wet, like within 30 seconds. And I had none of that. And I do believe 100% that it's because of the preparation that I did, again, unknowingly, that I was doing it for perimenopause. And I flew through it, but didn't. But menopause was a little bit of a different story. Started in about 5 or 6 years ago. I was at a wedding with my son, and he was doing the polka, and I was like, oh boy, he really isn't doing that well. So I went out on the dance floor and tried to teach him how to do it. We're having a blast, and all of a sudden my knee just popped, this huge pop, and I couldn't put any weight on it. Tears streaming down my face. Kind of told my son, just go out and have fun. And I dragged myself to the table, and my knee was twice the size of what it was. I didn't know then that that was related to the menopausal changes that my body had been going through. But then, then the next year I developed plantar fasciitis, and then the next year I had some shoulder issues, and then the next year. So that's where I really kind of buckled down, and in the midst wrote my book, The Pain-Free Formula, and really uncovered the reason why all those things were happening over that period of time.
Yeah, no, and I had similar where what really brought me down was the joint pain. My knees kind of gave up. I had the gel shots. I couldn't move one for a very long time. It was kind of frozen. The other one I was already getting PT for, and like you said, these physical things that you're like, wow, am I already aging in my 50s? What is this? Because I don't think yet the correlation, maybe a frozen shoulder, but the correlation with all the other things that come up physically in menopause. So wow, so you had that. How did you began your education in the US, moved to Australia, and now returned where you are in Milwaukee area, but what brought you to Australia originally, and did you notice any differences in the health education, healthcare approaches?
Oh, definitely. What brought me there first was my honeymoon with my then husband. We had gone there for 3 weeks, and there was a small office of the company that he worked at back in the States that had one or two people in it in Sydney. So when we were visiting, we went there and just met those people, and they said, hey, in the next few years we might be expanding. Would you ever be interested in volunteering to come over? And we're like, of course, this is amazing, right? Come over for a year. So fast forward 2 years, it was right before the Olympics, and they asked for volunteers. We raised our hand, and it's supposed to be for 12 months, and it turned into 14 years. So it was a really amazing experience over there. And is it different? Absolutely. There's more acceptance of complementary and alternative medicine. They still have certainly pharmaceutical, absolutely, but when you would drive down the street, you would see a mall that had an acupuncturist, a massage therapist, a physiotherapist, a naturopath, and that just was like every strip mall. Where over the year, those things now are starting really in the U.S. these last probably 5 to 10 years to be a lot more prevalent. But back then they were kind of tucked away. You didn't really kind of know where those things were. So I think in a way they were way ahead of us from a natural approach, and now it's kind of come to both the east and west coast of the U.S. and then now in the Midwest where I am.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of have almost like a glimpse of what's ahead and be here, and then as it comes, something you're already familiar with more than 30 years of experience in healthcare, physical therapy, nurse, holistic. Did you always know that you wanted to focus on women's health, hormones, and fertility, or did that evolve over time for you?
Yeah, it evolved over time. I started in sports medicine. That was my main reason for becoming a physical therapist. I was on the pre-med track, and then I had an injury in college sports that led me down the physical therapy track because I created that relationship with the physical therapist where I only saw the MD, the surgeon, which is what I wanted to be, for like 10 minutes every 3 months, where I was back in that day, I was seeing the physical therapist 3 times a week, and I really wanted to develop those relationships with my patients. So that's what brought me into sports medicine and physical therapy, which then morphs into orthopedics, and then dealing with my own health journey, kind of with thyroid issues and those things after I had my son, and then some fertility issues, trying to have another child. That all kind of moved me into learning more about women's health couples fertility. And then I was blessed to help thousands of couples have children as well that were told that they weren't able to. So that functional medicine aspect over in Australia really helped me broaden my scope from the standpoint of, pelvic health problem, or even a knee problem is not necessarily just in the pelvis or just in the knee, but could be something from a systemic point of view as well too. So really,
Yeah.
my own journey helped to broaden my scope.
I love that. Yeah, I think many of the women or guests I speak with on here, I mean, our experiences do play a role in our path and our journey, and we're going to take a left or a right, and putting it all together. I mean, that the combination, the wealth of knowledge that what do you see or believe that when we look at women's health or their issues through just one lens, what do we often miss, or what gets missed pretty often at this stage in midlife?
Wow, I mean, 99% of the things.
Or I was going to say, what doesn't get missed? Or what?
Exactly. If it's not straightforward, if it's not a localized issue, and even then, like pelvic health, for example, a woman will need to see typically 9 specialists on average to get a diagnosis of endometriosis. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's not that unusual for other things around pelvic health, which pelvic health, low back pain, all those, they're just one term for so many things that could be going on. So, in many of those physicians' defense, they weren't really taught those things in medical school, right? They were taught that, women, if they have a uterus, then you give them a contraceptive pill. If they don't have a uterus, you give them an antidepressant, right? Literally, I was taught that at a conference by a gynecologist. And that, and treating women that way over time and kind of just saying, oh, okay, it's all in their head, has really come to a head right now to say that's enough, right?
Yeah.
We demand more because now we know more. So when you know better, do better, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that resonates. My last podcast had a woman on who had stage 4 endometriosis, and she was fortunate that her mother's gynecologist was able to, she went to, I think, one doctor who knew what to do in a sense, with testing versus like what you're saying. Wow, not, 9 doctors, 9 specialists before getting answers in something that's quite serious, and we should know more. We should know
Exactly.
more. Talking about pain, because so many women in midlife, and I know men experience this also, but different, the joint, the back, stiffness. How much of this is, getting older? Is it really that, or is it really more related to our hormonal health? I know you wrote the book, right? The Pain-Free Formula, a holistic journey. So what were your findings around pain in our menopause, our body changing versus aging?
So we're all aging, right? So our cells are constantly overturning. We can slow that process. We're not going to completely reverse that process, at least today. So what I found, though, is the explanation as to why it happens significantly more during that perimenopause and menopausal range. As I was researching my book, um, just looking at when a woman, and even when a man's testosterone levels go down, but when a woman's estrogen progesterone levels go down, what we don't realize about those hormones, and even including cortisol, is those hormones, when they're in their good sweet spot for us, nice and balanced, they also give us an anti-inflammatory aspect of our health. So they're protective in a way, especially when estrogen and progesterone are nice and balanced. If estrogen's too high, then that can be more of a pro-inflammatory situation. But when they're nice and balanced, we get that anti-inflammatory effect. So now we lose those hormones, right, as we age, and that's a natural process. So we lose some of that anti-inflammatory protection. And then all the things, because I hear this so many times, Suzanne, I'm doing the same thing, that I'm eating the same way, could be even healthy, I'm doing the same things, and all of a sudden this starts to happen. Well, it's because some of those things that we're doing may not be the most supportive for our health, and then that inflammation has the opportunity to bubble up, or that collagen is thinning, and we do something that we've done 1,000 times, and all of a sudden we injure ourselves doing it. We're not really preparing our bodies for that, because kind of nobody knows this is coming until it starts to happen.
Right.
So all those things And cortisol is often talked about as a stress hormone, which if it's too high, that can be really an issue with inflammation, but nobody talks about if it's too low, we lose its anti-inflammatory effect if
Mm.
it's too low. So if you've been under stress for a long period of time, and it could take years or even decades, that cortisol becomes too low, not to the point where you're diagnosed with something called Addison's, but low enough that you're not getting that anti-inflammatory effect, then all the things that we want to keep doing and stay active doing puts this extra stress on our system that we don't have the protection for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, can't highlight that enough because I think I've spoken to two women on here about the stress aspect, and I am one of your prime example candidates. I was doing CrossFit in my 40s and thinking, like, look how strong I am. I feel so strong, and not realizing, thinking that it was stressful, but thinking it was a stress reliever to exercise and, keeping healthy. And then, yeah, the inflammation in my body that just would not go away, the pain, inflammation, the physical inflammation in my just all of it. So I'm newer to learning about that. I definitely sought care regarding health and nutrition and the gut, which again, most of the times is kind of, I feel like, one of the last things we look at related to health. We're like, first, like HRT, no HRT, or other things. But one thing that for exercise, she was like, no more CrossFit, walking, just really changing it up. And it was mainly to get my body in a place where it wasn't stressing it out.
Right. Yeah. And stress, and I have people in very similar situations to you. You and I are very much the same in that respect. But I have patients that are like, I'm not really stressed, right? And they aren't. But there's other aspects of their life, like their gut, that has, I'll ask them, do you have any bloating, constipation, diet? Oh yeah, I have all those things. And even if they don't, if they have this joint pain that's kind of moving around, the gut joint axis is extremely important in optimizing joint health. I hear so many people going, well, I was a nurse, so I really abused my body, or I was in sports, so I really abused my body, so that's why my joints are bad. Now, that's not necessarily the case. It usually has more to do with your gut health and how that hasn't allowed your joints to maintain a certain amount of health. Now, again, I'm not saying we're not aging. We will be aging, and
Right.
there will be changes that are made. But we are probably one of the first generations that want to stay healthy and active for as long as possible, right? Our parents, or at least my parents, I can speak for, were active and, sort of healthy in their mind. But they didn't really necessarily want to go play pickleball when they were 65, or they
Right.
didn't want to, go play volleyball or shoot baskets with their grandkids. But I think our generation really still wants to do that. And
Yeah.
we're recognizing, oh, and maybe our parents didn't do that because they got hurt, right? They had pain and they
True.
didn't know, they didn't have any other options to deal with it. We
Right.
have options, and now we're learning more about why those things are happening. So that's my
Yeah.
goal in life, is to keep somebody as active as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah, and what is exactly musculoskeletal specialist? What is that focus? And I hope I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah, musculoskeletal specialist. So basically, that is somebody who focuses on the musculoskeletal system. So that could be an orthopedic surgeon, or a physical therapist, or a personal trainer, occupational therapist, somebody who works with the muscles and bones and ligaments and those structures every day. That's really where my foundation was. And then on top of that, I built the functional medicine aspect of it as well too. When I moved to back from Australia to US, as a physical therapist, people couldn't kind of make the connection between functional medicine and physical therapy. Like, they couldn't understand how I understood hormones and things like that. So that's why I expanded my scope of practice to become a nurse. And someday, still, when I find time, I'm going to get my clinicals done and get my NP certificate. But right now, it just allows me to be able to see, again, holistically, our hormones addressing or contributing to your situation. Is the gut? Is it just simply a musculoskeletal issue? Is it an
Right.
environmental issue? Is it stress, right? So there's so many different things that it could be, especially if it's not getting better with your standard of care. then you need to look at different things outside the box.
Well, and that's so nice to be able to, as a patient, to go to someone like yourself that sees things from so many different angles versus, someone I might have to go to 5 different doctors to
Mm.
look at each thing. So that's such a great way that you service your patients that way. And getting into hormones a little bit, um, you mentioned so I was going to ask how connected are hormones and pain, and I think you spoke about that a little bit already about inflammation. What's your view on working with patients? Do most want to go immediately on HRT, or most looking for natural ways? How do you address that with your patients?
So in my area, again in the Midwest, it kind of comes from the East and West Coast, and then gradually it kind of settles in the Midwest as far as the way people look at things. So most of my patients are wanting to do things as naturally as possible, but are open to things like HRT and learning more about them, especially with the new evidence that's come about. So we kind of have a good mix of people who want to do HRT, and I'm supportive of people doing HRT. However, I will say if they don't address their gut health, they don't address their diet, they don't address their sleep, but HRT could be the thing that helps them address their sleep. So if they don't address their diet and gut health prior to going on
Mm-hmm.
HRT, many of the things that they're experiencing that they will have some relief with HRT will find their way back. And they'll still
Mm-hmm.
have 6 months or a year later, they'll be like, ugh, I still can't sleep, or,
Mm-hmm.
these joints still hurt, or I can't do this, or whatever. And a lot of that is because the gut and the eating plan wasn't addressed first. And I think
Right.
that's where, in my situation, because of my health journey, I learned about that early on and addressed it. And that's why I think I really sailed through the perimenopause. And then for me, that next step was considering hormone replacement. And that's where I've been on my journey. I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And after these things kept on popping up and see what my cortisol levels were, and really me being as optimal as I could be with my diet, HRT has been phenomenal for me as well.
Yeah, speaking with a few other experts most recently on my podcast, that was the one thing that I, again, learning while in process, um, I thought, oh, at first I thought menopause, all I remember being kind of told or heard was your period's going to go away. And I said, I can't wait. And then we arrived here and it's a completely new adventure. And so then I thought, oh, it's a case of hormones versus no hormones to make symptoms better. But like you said, what I'm learning and what others are talking about here is that, it's not a case of having another pill to fix something. It's like anything else. What can you do naturally about your sleep, your eating, all these things that when you do take the pill, that you already have, I guess, addressed the symptoms the best that you can, and that you're doing that. Because the gut one, I had gone on HRT and I thought, most of my symptoms had gone away. That the thing that did not go away was the weight gain and the bloating. And I just still waited it out a little bit, like, oh, this will go away. Maybe it takes a couple of years. And
Yeah.
it did not. So then I finally said, oh, it's important to address this. But again, I think it's new for me and many because maybe it's lower on the list, right? I mean, when you're in pain, that's the first thing I know I was addressing. I couldn't walk or exercise. The brain fog. Like I'm addressing all those things that are really impacting my life. And then, the weight is kind of like, oh, I'll get to that. So it's just so refreshing, though, like someone like yourself to really bring that to the forefront. I'm sure you've been doing it a long time with your patients. But the information is out there to know about how all of these are connected and very, very important.
And
Um,
truth be told, yeah, I mean, there are some patients where they can barely make it in for an appointment, right? The brain fog is so bad, to tell them, okay, I want you to do a food diary, and we're going to do all these testing to see what your sensitivities are, and they want to punch me in the face, right? So sometimes those people will benefit from that HRT at first to kind of settle those main symptoms down, to give them a little bit more resilience. right? And
Settle
then
those nerves down.
exactly. And then do it. So it really depends. You got to meet that person where they're at and then
Yeah.
educate them as well too. And there are herbs and there are things that can be done prior to going on HRT, but it certainly isn't going to change the hormone levels like HRT does. And some people don't do well on HRT, and that's another thing that needs to be addressed and figured out why. It might be a genetic thing, it might be something that they're eating. So it's not that everybody that goes on it lives this wonderful, happy life. It's a matter of seeing, is that going to be right for them? Right? And there's not a lot of testing that goes on prior to being put on HRT these days. So we don't have a baseline for a lot of people. They just go by symptoms, which is, I know it's not the recommended way to do testing, but I just find that more data means more benefit for the patient.
Right. Yeah, I ended up through a friend, thankfully a friend, because again, no one, my mom, my sisters really didn't seek hormone health. So I had a friend refer an endocrinologist. So I definitely had more, at least a little bit more extensive testing around hormones, vitamin levels, all the blood sugar levels, thyroid. So that's very refreshing. And I think I would have wanted to see that just to know where I'm at, to know what my body's doing, right? Versus,
Right.
I don't know if I'd want to go in and just give me a pill, but I mean, because you really want to know, at least I do, what is going on,
Right.
and how did you get into working around pelvic and sexual health? Was that always a part of what you do, or did that evolve as you were caring for women?
Yeah, it definitely evolved. I remember a friend of mine went to a course for pelvic health and sexual health from physical therapy, and they were taught internal work, and I was like, oh my gosh, why, what? You know, so I had my own biases and uncomfortable feeling about that. And then again, patients teach me, right? So then more that patients were coming to see me, and I was also working them with fertility, and then of course pelvic health and endometriosis and polycystic ovaries and all these things that also could involve pelvic pain. Made me really go, okay, what am I worried about here? I mean, this is my own bias I need to get past, because otherwise I can't help these people, right? So started to learn a little bit more about it. And pelvic health is musculoskeletal health as well. It's just in a very specialized area. Sexual health, also, understanding hormones and understanding the nervous system and understanding the different ways that can be affected in a negative way, is really important to help people with their sexual health issues as well too, whether it's male or female. So that kind of evolved along with it, to allow me to help those patients who were really desperately needing help and weren't getting help. Many people
Yeah.
were said, okay, go to this physical therapist for pelvic health, and they were taught Kegel's exercises and think that that's pelvic health. And maybe it's a component, but a small component typically. So that made me again think, okay, what can I add to my toolbox that's going to help more patients that I see?
Yeah, and they're beginning to trust you, which is nice because, again, every time, especially when it's something more intimate, having to find a new doctor that you trust and feel comfortable with your body, and then have to kind of almost start over to tell them about your body and your journey. It's so nice to go to one place
Hmm.
that's kind of addressing everything. And let's hope that that would be more of kind of your experience coming from Australia, to hear more commonplace, where a woman doesn't feel like it's so segmented, right? And feeling all over the place, that you could go to someone and they could address. It's just such a beautiful experience, because I know how much one who has the time to go to a bunch of doctors and
Yeah.
make a bunch of different appointments.
And it's
Um,
really interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how we're kind of conditioned to believe that that's necessary, right? Our system, our medical system is all about specialization, right? And not really connecting the different parts of ourselves. So I do have patients still that feel more comfortable going here for this and there for that and here for this and there for that. And that's okay. I mean, everybody's good, but a lot of it comes from a place of thinking that that's the right way to do it versus stepping back and going, okay, how could this person, know everything about it? And I certainly don't feel like I know everything about the human body, but my goal is to understand the connections between systems and then certainly refer out if necessary, 100%. But I think we miss that a lot in the beginning of when we're looking at somebody who's been suffering for a long time that hasn't really gotten any answers, been going to many, many different places,
Yeah.
seeing the connections. And that's what I like to, that makes it fun for me is to, it's a puzzle, right? So how is this connected to that and why did this happen here? And it could be multifaceted. It's not necessarily just one thing.
Yeah, definitely. Let's hope. Let's hope. You've been doing this for a while, and so understanding women's bodies now, what had you wish you had known possibly earlier? What has been like some ahas for you that maybe you wish you would have known earlier?
Great, really great question. I think just actually what we've been talking about, the importance of hormones, the importance of gut health, the importance of what I was putting in my body and how that was impacting my performance, whether it was on the court, when I was playing sports in high school and college, or whether it was in my relationship, with intimacy, or with my relationships at work, my moods, things like that. Um, it was such a disconnect, and now that I'm on the other side of it, that I go, of course, food, of course, things we put in our body and that we surround our bodies with is going to have an impact on it. Whereas before, that wasn't even like considered, right? And I see
Right.
that so much now, too. That still, again, we're conditioned not to think that way. Um,
Yeah.
the struggle is sometimes pulling people over to this side of the line to go, looking at how these things intersect and
Connect.
intertwine themselves is really important. So I wish I would have known that earlier, but I think the
Yeah.
journey I'm on, again, with patients helping me and me helping patients has been a beautiful way to get where I am today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just feel so fortunate that we've arrived in a time where there's more conversations, more knowledge, knowing better, like you said, doing better. I've had my niece as one of my early guests on here. She's a nurse, she's in her early 20s. And what does she think menopause is? And so I'm hoping, the generations to come will just really live in a time where it's not even a thought, right? All these things are connected when they go to seek help. For a woman listening today who's thinking something's changed, I don't feel like myself, I don't know where to start, what are some of the things that you would tell someone as far as where to start, whether it's an appointment or it's checking in with themselves?
I would always start with your eating plan. Always start there 100%. Get somebody that's working with you on optimizing your food intake. Now, that being said, there's still healthy foods that you might be reacting to, but at least getting a good baseline. That's number one where it would start. If you're already there and you feel like you eat really well, which is what a lot of my patients will say, then you want to find a practitioner that understands that there can be, even with good food, you can't have some reactions with that. So food sensitivities, looking at that, not the IgG test, the I as in Idaho, G as in George, G as in George test, because those have been proven to be inaccurate. But things like the LCAT test that I do at my clinic are really important in helping us figure out what we may be responding to that we're eating that's creating this excessive inflammation. I mean, that alone has helped people lose weight, 30, 40 pounds without
Wow.
doing anything in regards to hormone levels. And these are generally healthy people to start with, right?
Hmm.
So those are the places that I'd start. Always start with the gut and your eating plan, and then kind of move out from there. Now, if you have an injury or if you hurt yourself, start with somebody who is a musculoskeletal specialist, and then if you're not getting improvements from the standard of care, good physical therapy, good hands-on physical therapy, exercise instruction, all that type of stuff, then start seeking out somebody who looks a little bit more holistically, to help you figure out why you're not getting better. But really use the surgery and injections as your, I don't want to say absolute last resort, except for surgery.
Right.
Injections not as your first line of defense, especially cortisone injections can actually degenerate the joints and affect the tendons negatively. So we do that too soon. That can set you up for further problems down the road.
Yeah, no, great, great insight. I could keep talking with you all day because I know we've only scratched the surface, and that should really be the title, is
Right.
either menopause is a mouthful or midlife is a mouthful. There's so much here that we are learning, growing, experiencing. So before we wrap up, what is maybe one message you want women listening to take away about their bodies, their health, and their midlife years that you've learned or been learning lately?
Oh, pain does not have to be a life sentence. That's the number one thing is just because you're getting older doesn't mean that you're gonna have suffer from pain, or that your pain is not gonna get any better. It really truly is not a life sentence, but it is a message from our bodies to listen and to figure out what our next steps can be so that we can, continue to be as healthy and as active as we want for a long time.
A longer time, quality of life. And where
Mhm.
can listeners find you, learn more about your work, and connect to you? Your website is newyouhealthandwellness.com. Is in the name of your business, is it New You Health and Wellness?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. Yep. And so they can find me at that website. They can find us in the same name on socials. The website the book that I wrote is called The Pain Free Formula. They can find that on Amazon. And I have a podcast of the same name where we talk about different ways to address pain, that expand from the book and also things that aren't in the book. So we'll continue to try to teach people what they can do and how they can ask their practitioners that they're working with for more help.
I love that. And podcast is like, I feel like it's online learning. It's such a short, you could get short snippets, in between and learn so much. And I'm going to check that out as well. How exciting. And I just want to thank you for your time today. I know you keep a very busy schedule, so thank you so much for being
Oh,
here.
you're welcome. Thank you for reaching out, and I really appreciate you, having me on and being able to talk about this. And thank you for everything that you do to help women and even men traverse that midlife part of our
Thank
lives.
you. As the wing woman here, that's what I'm. Yeah, just as a ride or die, a wing woman, a bestie, whatever you want to call it.
Love it. I
Uh,
love it.
yes, well, thank you so much. And I hope today's episode reminded you of something important. Your body is always talking to you, and in midlife, it may have a few more things to say: pain, hormonal changes, shifts in energy, gut health, pelvic health, changes in intimacy. All of these things and more can be a part of your midlife experience, but that doesn't mean you have to simply shrug it off. Well, I guess this is what getting older feels like. It is not. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today, it's get curious about your body, ask questions, seek answers, and I'll say until you find them. Find healthcare providers who listen to what you're experiencing, not just what the lab says. And remember, normal and optimal are not always the same things. You deserve to understand what's happening in your body. You deserve support. And yes, you deserve to feel good in your body again. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to like, follow, or subscribe. And if you have a minute, leave a review. If you have any questions, a story topic, future episode, reach out to me at yourmidlifewingwoman@gmail.com. And if you know another woman who's been told everything looks normal, but she doesn't feel right, please send this episode to her. Midlife isn't about settling for feeling less. So it's about trusting your body, listening, and finding back your way to vitality. I'm Suzanne, your midlife wingwoman, and this has been Men, Menopause, and Miracles. Until next time, bye for now.